A few years back, I was FaceTiming my friend late at night. It was my best friend, Matt, and we would FaceTime quite a bit during this time. I lived in an apartment by myself, so we'd been on call with each other for a few hours just chopping it up. Then I got another FaceTime call from some random number. I didn't know who it was, and it told Matt about it. They said that I should answer the call and see who it was. I was pretty curious as well, so I ended the call with Matt and answered the FaceTime. When I did, saw this man who I did not recognize. His eyes were really wide, like he was purposely opening them almost as big as she could, and he was also holding the phone super close to his face. It made him look just really weird and creepy in general. I asked who the guy was, and he responded by saying my name. I was confused and asked him how we knew me, but basically he just started threatening me at that point. He was talking in this weird half-whispered voice and saying a bunch of nonsense, like he was saying that I needed to watch my back and that he was coming for me and that kind of stuff. It was hard to understand everything he was saying because he was talking weird and rambling on. He was also talking pretty quiet. Now I had no clue as to who he was and how he even knew me. I tried asking him a couple of times, but he never answered me. It was so strange that eventually I just hung up. Then I called Matt back and told him the crazy story of the guy, of course. Matt thought that it was really funny and couldn't stop laughing. I was laughing too, but I didn't really find it as funny. I mean, some random creepy guy was threatening me as if he was a stalker or something. What if Harold was? I didn't know how he knew my name, number, or any other information. As I was talking with Matt again like 5 minutes later, it told Matt this, and I once again answered the guy's call. This time, it was more of the same as she continued his rant. I tried to interrupt them and asked him several times who he was and what he wanted. The man then just started staring right into the camera with extremely wide eyes. He stopped talking entirely and was just staring. This went on for an uncomfortable amount of time. Now I was asking him things and he wasn't saying anything at all at that point. It told him that I was blocking him, and I hung up. Then I actually blinked his number. I called Matt again and told him about what had happened, and we continued to talk. The guy didn't bother me for the rest of the night. I was wondering if he would call back with another number or something, or show up at my apartment maybe. But luckily he didn't, and for like 2 weeks nothing strange happened. I had basically forgotten about the entire thing, but randomly like 2 weeks later, I got another FaceTime. I don't know why, but I answered it. I was at home, and it was sometime at night. It was the same guy doing basically the same thing. As soon as I hung up the phone and I blocked this number. As well, I really didn't know what to make of this. I figured that he would call back again with another number or something, but after that, I never got another call. I still wonder about it. Who was that guy, and how did he know all that information about me? I've thought about it over and over again, and I can't come up with a good answer. It still gives me the creeps to think about it, but I'm just glad that he hasn't bothered me, and hopefully never will. When I was younger, I used to go to the library many times after school. This takes place when I was a freshman in high school. Back then, I did not have access to a computer with internet at home, so many times when I was walking home from school, I would stop at the library. There was one that was roughly halfway back home from school, and only a couple of blocks out of my way. Then I would do homework and also play games on the internet and goon Facebook and stuff. Most days, I would be there for a few hours and then walk the rest of the way back home. I went there on average maybe 2 or 3 times a week, but sometimes more or less soon day. I went to the library after school and then logged onto one of the computers. The library was pretty large solars that had 2 levels. Usually there would be quite a few people there, but they were pretty spread out. So I was on the computer, and I remember that I went onto Facebook. When I did, I saw that I had a new friend request. It was some random guy who I didn't know. The profile picture was of a car, and I didn't recognize the name, but back then I would automatically accept every friend request that I got. I didn't even care if I knew the person, so I accepted it and thought nothing more about it. Well, probably just about a minute after I accepted it, the guy sent me messages saying hi. I responded back saying hi, and now I was wondering who he was here. Responded saying that he was in the library with me, right? Now they seemed kind of strange too. I was not aware of knowing anybody at the library. I had never seen one of my friends from school. There the guy said that he was on the other side of the library and upstairs. I didn't really know what to think of it, and I don't remember exactly what I said, but the guy kept talking to me on Facebook, and I remember he soon started to ask me personal questions. So I decided to stop responding to him because he was kind of coming across as a creep. I went to another internet tab and ignored it, but I kept seeing more notifications pop up that he was sending messages. This was really starting to creep me out, so I closed everything, logged off the computer, and then left. I had no idea who it was in the library. I walked straight home, and I hoped that I wouldn't encounter that man anymore. So a couple of days later, I went back to the library again after school like most times. I found an open computer and then logged on. I went on Facebook to see several more messages from the guy. I didn't respond and just ignored them. He must have seen that I logged onto Facebook. I know that it's house other friends that are currently online. So he started sending messages. I didn't bother to look and I continued to ignore him. Several minutes later, though suddenly a felt hat upon my shoulder, I looked and it was some guy who I had never seen before. He was much older than me, had an uneven gray and brown beard and was wearing a green. Had then asked me why I wasn't responding to him. I was so surprised that I didn't say anything. The man then asked me to go with him. He said that he was leaving and motioned for me to get up. As Ed nodded the man, he continued to stand there for about a minute before walking away, but the man only walked over towards the front of the library near the doors. I watched him sit down in a chair near the entrance and face me. I wanted to leave, but he was sitting right by the doors and I would have to walk past him. He was just kind of watching me, and I felt like if I left, they would follow me or something. I stayed at the computer for a while. Every time that I looked over into the direction of the doors, I saw that the man was still there and often looking at me. So then I called my mom. Luckily, I had just recently gotten a cell phone. It told her about the situation and asked her to come and pick me up. She agreed. She had just gotten out of work, so it took her about 20 minutes to get there. But when she did, she walked into the library, and then we were both able to leave. When we got near the doors, the man kind of walked away after leaving. My mom called the library and reported the whole thing. They were very quickly able to find out who the man was. The police even got involved. The man ended up getting banned from that library. So I was able to go back not too long after and never saw him again. Thankfully, this happened just last year. I was going to be meeting up with a friend in the city. I lived almost 10 minutes away from downtown, which is where I was going, so I left my apartment and started driving on the road. My apartment was on this really quiet street, and I remember that as I was driving there was a car behind me. I noticed it because the car was red, so it stood out a little bit. Of course, I didn't think that I was being followed at first. I went to my way to the city, and I wasn't even looking behind me for most of the way. But when I left the highway to take an exit for downtown, I noticed that the same red car was behind me. I thought that it was strange, but maybe just a coincidence. After making it into the city, I accidentally made a wrong turn. Driving in downtown can be a very confusing event. Though I had the directions on my phone, I would still make mistakes in the city sometimes, so I had to go around and head back. I did notice that their car behind me did the exact same thing, and that seemed really suspicious. So now I was worried that this car was following me, but I didn't know why. I was also trying to drive in the city, which was hard enough. I had to go the end of the street and then turn. When I did, the red car died as well. I wasn't so sure if I wanted to stop and park and get out of my car if somebody was following me, but then I got lucky, or so I thought. The street that I came on to was pretty busy with a lot of other cars. It was almost stopping, got traffic. I was able to sort of get away from the red car because there were so many others. It may have cut somebody. A fan changed lanes a little bit, but soon I got ahead of the red car. There were several cars in between use, and I was feeling better about it. Then I had to make another turn, and I didn't see their car behind me. Many more moments later, I arrived at where I was parking. I was able to find a few open spaces on the side of the road, and it took one. After parking, it started to get out of my car. And then I noticed the red car. It was parallel parking on the side of the road, just a few spaces behind me. My heart sank. I decided to go to the spot had I was meeting my friend. I would just have to walk a couple of blocks, so after leaving my car, I started quickly walking down the sidewalk before I made it around the corner. Though I looked back when I did, is a man leave their car and start walking in my direction. He was wearing a black jacket and also sunglasses. I continued to go towards my destination. I checked over my shoulder every minute or so. The man followed me all the way there, but hadn't get closer to me. He remained a good distance back. After arriving, I met my friend and told her about what was going on. I pointed the man out to her. Now where we were, there was a number of other people around. My friend suggested that when confront the guy, he couldn't do anything with all these people around. So we both started to approach him. He was just kind of standing around in the corner, looking inconspicuous. When we got within maybe 30 feet of him, he turned and started walking away. I thought all about him, so several hours later, I was leaving. I walked back to my car, and by now it was nighttime, but as I was starting to get inside of my car, I noticed that their car was still there. I stopped and did not get inside of my car. Instead, it turned and started walking in the other direction. I heard a car door opening, and then noticed that the guy was getting out of his car. I couldn't believe that he had been there the entire time. Once again, he started walking in my direction. Now I started to walk on the sidewalk just to get away from the guy. I kept going and hopping to get to a busier street. The particular sidewalk that we were on was now quiet at this time of night. The man stayed a ways back. It turned a corner and reached a slightly busier street. And that's when I saw a police car was parked on the side of the road with an officer inside of it. I walked straight for the car. When I arrived, I said hit at the officer and told him what was going on. Then noticed the man going back around the corner. The police officer then walked with me to my car. When we got near, car drove away. After that, I was able to get home without being followed, and I haven't seen the guy or their cars and still don't know how to explain it. I'm not sure why he was following me. It was very creepy. I used to work at a gas station. I only worked there for about a month, but still had a scary experience when I worked there. It was mostly at night one time. I was working by myself, but it really wasn't that late yet. I think it was maybe about 10 at night. Customers were coming in here, and they were pretty steady up to that point, but at about 10 is when things really started to quiet down. So I was just standing there behind the counter, and the last customer left for the next hour or so. Things were very quiet. I think we got just 2 or 3 people inside, and just a few more get gassed. Then the store completely empty. Things became very quiet, and I became very bored. When this happened, I would usually just goon my phone. There was nothing that really needed to be done. At that time, maybe 10 minutes went by, but I suddenly heard a noise. It was coming from the back end of the store, a part that I couldn't see now. The store wasn't that big and had maybe 5 aisles total, but there were errors out of my vision. Still, it was startling because I was 100% sure that nobody was in there. I got up from where I was to look, but I was really pretty nervous. Then I heard another noise. I asked if anybody was there, but I got no response. I started walking down one of the aisles towards where the noise was. I really wanted to just turn around and leave it alone. Though once I made it to where I had heard the noise, I still saw nothing. But just seconds later, as I was still kind of looking around, I heard another noise. Now in the next aisle over, I looked and then saw a man up here from around the corner. I have no idea where he came from or where he had been. He had longer hair and a longer beard as well. The man walked right up to me and reached out this hand. I could tell he was holding something, but didn't know what. I had no clue what he was doing until I felt a shock and fell to the ground. The man tasted me. I was down, and he then stepped over me and as a whim grabbed some random items off the shelf. He then yelled some random sentence that I didn't hear very well. I just remember hearing a couple of curse words. After that I left. I was still on the ground for like a minute, and then finally got up. Then I called the police. I reported the guy, and the cops showed up a while later. But the man was long gone. We looked at security footage, and the guy literally hid around behind one of the aisles for over an hour. I have no idea what he was doing. I just know that after that I quit a while ago. I would deliver pizzas from my summer job. I became a school teacher out of college, but the pay wasn't great for my first couple years. So over the summer months when school wasn't in session, I worked a part-time job in pizza delivery. I worked at Domino's, and they stayed open late, so most of my shifts were night shifts that I would work into the early morning hours. It was one of those early morning deliveries which ended up being a scary encounter. The order started out normally as I put the pizza which had been ordered into my car and drove to the address listed. One thing I noticed when I was turning onto the street was that there were no street lights at all there. Was a row of 4 or 5 houses on one side, and then on the other side of the street was the start of woods only about 10 feet away from the road. I parked in front of the last house on the block and walked up to the front door with the pizza. There was no doorbell at this particular houses, so I knocked loudly a couple of times. I waited a minute or two, but nobody came to answer the door. I couldn't just leave the pizza on the front step because we hadn't received any payment for it. And I pounded one last time on the door, making it as loud as I possibly could. Finally, a dim light turned on behind the door, and an older gentleman opened up. He told me grilly that he didn't order a pizza. I felt bad because it was obvious that I had woken him up from sleeping. I apologized, thinking I had the wrong address, potentially. Still standing on the man's front step, I pulled out my phone to check the address which was written down for the delivery. The address was correct. However, so it must have been a customer entering their address wrong, which happened every once in a while. There wasn't much I could do, especially since there was no phone number given for the orders. I had to just bring the pizza back to the store. I headed back to my car and went to the passenger side, putting the pizza in the front seat. I had just closed the door and was going to walk back around to my driver's side door when I felt cold metal being pressed into the back of my head. I was being robbed. A deep-voiced man instructed me to give him all the cash I instantly complied with his demand, handing him the cash pouch from my front seat that I carried around for deliveries. We fortunately emptied it fairly often, so I think there was only about $100 or so in the whole time I was grabbing the cash for the robber. I hadn't been allowed to turn around or face him. I held the money behind my back and he took it forcefully. The man instructed me to not try and follow him and then pushed me hard into the side of my car. I turned around just in time to see a figure disappearing into the woods and out of sight. I was breathing fast and my heart raced the whole drive back to the store. I had never had a gun pointed at me before, and it was a terrifying altercation. It was odd to Meth that this elaborate plan was set up getting a house in a good location near woods and waiting for a pizza order just for a note of guaranteed small sum of money, the rest of the time that is spent delivering pizzas. I never had another experience like that, but just in case, I always carried mace with me and got a better eye for my surroundings. I remember I had really memorable experiences several years ago. I was 18 at the time and my little sister was 15. She went to a concert with friends and my parents told me that I had to give her a ride home. The concert was in the city, and it was a little over 10 minutes away from where we lived. I'm not sure if it was Justin Bieber or Taylor Swift or what, but there was like a million people there, so I drove down to the city and ended up getting really lucky to find a parking spot on the side of the street. I parallel parked just a couple of blocks away from the concert venue. It was sometime at night, and I think the concert was supposed to be ending shortly. So I texted my sister and let her know where I was. Meanwhile, the street and sidewalks were pretty quiet. I was guessing it would be chaos after the concerts. So I really hoped that my sister would leave right away. As at there, it turned my headlights off, and then just went on my phone probably 10 minutes into this. I remember hearing footsteps outside of my car. I figured that it was just somebody walking down the sidewalk, but I looked up and saw a guy approaching from behind and go right up to my window. Then he knocked on it. I rolled the window down a little bit, and that's asked the guy what he wanted. I was afraid that maybe he was a parking cop and was telling me that I couldn't be here or something, but the guy just asked me if I could get out and help him. I asked him what he needed help with, but he didn't say. He just told me that he would show me. This guy seemed sort of suspicious. I told him I couldn't because I was waiting for my sister and I had to pick her up. He kept asking me, and I told him no again at that point. The man actually walked away. He went towards the back. My Karen then went up back on the sidewalk, but he didn't keep walking away any farther. He just stood around on the sidewalk, only like 20 feet away from me. Then I watched him take out a cigarette and start smoking it. I kept waiting for my sister. Several minutes went by, and this guy was still just standing there. The more he was standing there was making me uncomfortable. Like I just knew that he was going to approach me again. I would say another couple minutes after this, I got a text from my sister saying that she was leaving now. At around this same time, he's off the guy. In my mirror, starting to approach again, the guy walked up and then tried opening my back door to my car, which was locked. Then he came over to my window and started aggressively banging on it. I didn't roll it down this time. I could hear the man starting to yell at me to open the window and let him in. I ignored it entirely. The man continued and kept trying to get me to open my driver's door. He even started kicking. Had he continued, he probably would have put some dents in the car, but at that point, I put it in drive and pulled away. I went down the street and went straight to the concert venue. It was a basketball arena, and I called my sister and then circled the stadium until she made it outside. I briefly pulled over when she was by me and she got in, then I headed home, but unfortunately, because I was so close to the arena, traffic was really bad. We were in a standstill for a while. People were honking and stuff, and we were barely moving after sitting in traffic for probably 20 minutes. We had made it a little ways and were almost out of downtown in that time. I remember looking around and seeing the same guy. He was walking down a sidewalk. And the crazy thing is that right when I looked over about a second later, he looked over at me, our eyes locked for just a moment, and then he started walking over. I couldn't go anywhere because of the traffic. The guy walked off the sidewalk and into the road and right up to my window once again. He started banging on it and stuff. He started honking, and a bunch of other people were honking too. After like 10 seconds of this, I finally walked away again within 5 more minutes. Probably we had made it back onto the highway and were out of traffic. Luckily we made it back home okay, and my car had noticeable damage looking back. I don't know what that guy's problem with me was. It's so crazy. And then went out into the street to attack my car. I used to work at a Walmart supercenter. Several years ago, I only worked there for about 6 months, if that. My job was just stocking shelves, and I often worked really late night, and after the store had closed, it was a job that was pretty easy, so I didn't really mind it that much. But one time I was working and the store hadn't quite closed. Yet still I was stocking shelves in sort of the back middle of the store. It was normally a pretty quiet area, and then I was all by myself. About 30 minutes went by, and I hadn't seen anybody at all at that point. I put in some headphones, which I do all the time. I think the store was closing in like 10 minutes at that particular moment. I was now listening to my music and stocking the shelves. Not long after this, though, I could sense that somebody was behind me. I looked over my shoulder and saw this woman standing there. She was wearing this really creepy looking mask over her face. It wasn't covering her entire head, but just the face, including her eyes. It really freaked me out. At First, especially with the music in my ears, so I hadn't heard her approaching. She was like 20 feet away from me. It took my headphones out and laughed, realizing it was probably a joke. I jokingly said that she scared me, but the woman just stood there and did not say anything at all. It then asked if I could help her with something, but she still didn't say anything. So after another awkward moment or two, I said that I was going to get back to stalking, and I did so. A few moments later, I looked back, and the woman was now gone. It was very strange, but I figured it was just somebody trying to get a reaction out of me. I continued with my work for probably an hour. I was just working like normal myself in that area. I moved a couple of mills over, but was still in the same general location, and it was still very quiet. Then I remember I randomly turned around again and saw that the woman was back. No, this was really weird because we were close now and head bent for well over an hour. I couldn't believe that. I was aware once more she was just standing there like before, and I asked her what she was doing here. I said that the store was closed. Of course, the woman didn't say anything at all. She then picked up a random off the shelf and threw it at me. I hit me and stood up. She picked up something else and tossed at me too. I didn't know what was going on. I just left the aisle out the back way and walked quickly to try to find another co-worker. When I did this, I heard the woman walking after me. I headed to the front of the store, and at that point I lost her. I found my manager and told her about the woman, and she radioed to somebody else. Before I knew it, the police got called, and they entered the store and searched for the woman. Apparently this lady had also done the same thing to another coworker. Eventually the police were able to locate her and get her to leave the store. After that, Wall went back to work. That was my craziest experience working at Walmart. This is something that happened to me when I was much younger. I believe I was about 12 or 13 during this time. I lived at home with my older brother and my parents. One of my favorite things to do after school most days was downwind by playing some video games. I would go upstairs to my bedroom and start playing on my PlayStation 2 for a while. Sometimes I would play all the way until it was time for dinner soon day. I got in the bedroom to play some video games. Both my parents were still at work and my brother was still at school. That's how things usually were for an hour or two after I got back on most days. I remember playing video games in a little while, and I heard my brother getting home downstairs. The front door opened and closed, and I heard him walk inside. I thought nothing of it and I kept gaming, but about an hour later, I got a call from my mom. I had a home phone in my bedroom and saw through the caller ID that it was my mom's cell phone. When I answered, she told me that she was on her way to pick up my brother from his friend's house and they would be home soon. My dad was going to pick up some food on the way home from work, and she wanted to know what I wanted. I told her whatever food it was that I was in the mood for that night, and then we said bye and I hung up. It was only after ending the call that I realized it was strange that my brother was not home if he was at a friend's house. Then who had I heard entering our house? My heart started racing, and I had a terrible feeling. I carefully walked to my bedroom door and opened it up. I never heard the person walking upstairs or near my bedroom. I didn't know where they went after entering the house, so after not hearing or seeing anything, I left my bedroom. I quietly walked down the hallway and looked downstairs. I still saw nothing. Then I went down the stairs. Once there, I walked around the main level of the house. Looking, I did not see anybody, but when I was near the kitchen and kind of the front door, I heard a noise coming from the basement. It sounded like somebody was down there. I quickly ran away and went back upstairs to my bedroom. A short time after entering my room, I heard the front door to the house open and close again. At that point, I ran back downstairs. So when I got to the front door, I saw what looked like a man walking away down the street. I didn't recognize him. Randomly saw him for like 2 seconds. It might have been the same guy who had been in the house, but I think it was. It then locked all the doors and called my parents, who then called the police. The door had been left unlocked for when my brother got home. I hadn't known he was going to a friend's house. Looking back, I can't believe it happened. I didn't even know I was home alone with some random guy downstairs. I'm really glad that he didn't go in army bedroom. I had a wild experience golfing a couple years ago with my friend. We went to this golf course close by, and I would say that it's pretty average. I remember that we scheduled it sort of last minute, and the course was not that busy. We intentionally got at a time that we could see there was nobody directly in front or behind us, because all the time slots were available for like an hour and a half, so we got ton right in the middle. And this was nice because I always hate when you're golfing and there's somebody faster you and then you feel rushed because they're waiting. I also don't like having to wait on other people. My friend and I are not particularly fast or slow, but it's just more enjoyable to not worry about those things. So we arrived for our tee time and then got to the first hole. We then teed up off and began playing well. By the time we were on the third hole, you noticed there was somebody behind you. It was a man who appeared to be playing by himself. As soon as As a whim, I felt unhappy. I must have really scheduled right before the tea time, because every time's lot behind us had been open. Earlier still it wasn't that big of a deal and we just kept golfing. However, the guy behind us was going really fast. I remember after we hit our drives on the fourth hole, the guy already parked his golf cart right next to ours. When we got inside the cart to go get tour balls, she made a comment saying, "I hope I'm not going to be having to wait for you guys all day." I offered him to go in front of us, but he said no. So me friends said we would try to be fast, and we're not the best golfers in the world, but we're not that bad. That we were not out there just messing around and taking forever. We were trying to be serious golfers. So we went and finished the hole and then moved on. We actually picked up our pace to stay ahead of the guy, but the man stayed right on us the entire time. He continued to make comments. He yelled at us to hurry up about 2 or 3 times and was also criticizing our golfing. I remember that he said that my swing was durable, with and ended up catching up with a group of people golfing ahead of us, and we were stuck between waiting for people and having somebody wait for us, which is specifically what I was trying to avoid. I remember the guy said a few more comments. I was just ignoring him, thought then things reached a boiling point on hole 10. By that point, my friend and I were mad at the guy behind us, and apparently he was also mad at us. We teed off, and then drove our cards to the fairway to begin our second strokes before we even hit our balls for a second time. Thought the man behind us teed off his ball, ended up nearly hitting us. You're not supposed to tee off when there's people in the middle of the course. Obviously it can be dangerous. Wes stopped, and when the man walked over, tussed to get this ball, Wes started yelling at them for nearly hit. Us asked him why he didn't wait until we were at least out of the way. The man seemed even more angry though and said that it was our fault. He said we were taking forever and we didn't know how to. Golf winded up, making him go in front of us at that point. And finally, he actually did. There was nobody in sight behind the man, so after my friend and I let them go, we played the 10th hole like 3 times. Wes stayed there long enough that we were sure the guy would be long gone. Then we were able to play the rest of the course without any problems. I really wish we would have made the guy go in front of us sooner. We had offered twice, but has said no both times. So after being done, when we got back to my car in the parking lot, there were all these dents in the side. It was unbelievable. Like somebody had taken a golf club to it a bunch of times, and we were sure who had done it to it. That had to be that guy. We went inside the clubhouse and reported it. I also called the police, but unfortunately the golf course had no cameras in the parking lot, so we couldn't prove it. I haven't been back there since. I live with my wife in a pretty typical neighborhood. We have a little bit larger backyard at this kind of a hill slanted downwards, and it also is a tad bit of an angle. It's nothing crazy as far as size goes, but there's a few random trees scattered around and some bushes as well, some open space at the back side of the yard. I have a large net where I practice golfing. I will go there some nights and work on my swing because I love to golf in my free time. Zoom night I went out after dark to practice swings. I was going to be golfing the next day with one of my buddies. Unfortunately, I hadn't had a chance to practice much that week and had been busy at works. I went out a little late to get a feel for my swing. My wife stayed inside, and I got a bucket of balls and headed to the back. It was a bit of a walk to the back side of the yard where my net was, so I got out the and began practicing. Our yard was big enough that I never worried about bothering a neighbor or something. Our backyard had a pretty private feel to it and had it all fence over most of it. So about 15 minutes into hitting, I heard this noise. I looked over and saw this random guy literally walking in our yard. He was maybe 50 feet away from me. I had no idea who the guy was or where he had come from. I did not get a good look at him in the dark with him being that far away as well. He also wasn't looking at me. I wasn't sure if he had seen me, but I figured he had to know I was back here. With me actively hitting golf balls, she walked sort of quickly and was going up towards my house from where I was. You couldn't fully see the house. I knew that the back door was left unlocked though for me being out here, and I realized that might be where the man was headed, so I quickly started running up towards the house. I kept my golf club in hand, to use as a potential weapon. If I had to iron up a different route that the man was going, he was more off to the side of the yard, and probably did that intentionally to stay hidden better because there were many more trees and bushes obstructing the view from that side. I was able to make it up to the house before him, and I quickly got inside. It then closed and locked the back door. Then I let out a sigh of relief, but moments later the man tried opening the door. I went over and told my wife about it. We then went to a window and looked out the back and saw the man still there. We called the police, but are off going out of sight. Before they got there, the police looked around the yard, but came up empty. The man had gotten away. It was really unusual for something like that to happen in our neighborhood though. I still don't know who he was or what he was doing. I'm glad nothing like that has happened since this happened a couple of summers ago. I was out in the back doing some yard work. There had been some storms recently, and I have a somewhat large property. I have an open area in the backyard. And then there's also woods that border sits. I was with my wife, and we were picking up the tree branches and sticks in the yard. Then we were bringing it to a pile just inside of the woods. After we were done doing this, I was going to mow the lawns. So I remembered that we were working for a while, and my wife suddenly came up to me and said that she saw someone in the woods. Nobody was supposed to be inside of our woods because it's a private property. So I went over to where the woods started, and we had been going. When I looked, though, I did not see anyone. My wife came over to me and pointed out where she had seen the man. He was gone by now, though, and I did not know who it could have been. My wife told me that the man was just standing there, maybe 50-50, and then he saw where she then walked away, and I guess she must have as well. I really had no explanation, but we working. When we were just about done, though, I saw the man myself. I was bringing some tree branches over, and I saw the guy looking at me standing a decent ways in the woods. It was just some guy. He was wearing a shirt and jeans. I yelled to him, asking what he was doing in our yard. The man then moved away. I decided to go out there and confront them. I knew that might not be the best idea, but I did it anyways. I started walking into the woods. When I did, the man started moving away faster. He then started running. I actually ran over a short time and told the guy not to come back. However, he was too quick and was able to escape me. I didn't even really come close to catching up with him, and if I did, I don't even know what have done. I certainly wasn't going to tackle him or anything. I just wanted to talk to him and let him know not to come back into my yard after I felt like I had chased him fair enough away from my property. I went back. I rejoined my wife in the yard, and then I was able to mow the lawn now. I thought that was the end of the guy being in our yard, but not quite, so the rest of the day was fine. I got the lawn mowed no problem, but after we had gone to bed, we were both woken up that night at around 11 a.m. I heard a loud knocking coming from the front door. We were both very confused. I got up and looked to see who was there. The knocking lasted for maybe 30 seconds. It continued as I was walking towards the front door. By the time I reached the front door, though, it had stopped. I looked out and I saw what appeared to be Eamon moving away. I didn't see him well, and I didn't see him very long before he went out of sight, but I think it was the same guy. After that, he did not come back. I still don't know what he was doing, and I don't know why he knocked on our door in the middle of the